Corrupt cops pushed her into the sea. Unaware a Navy SEAL and his dog were watching. The night swallowed the pier in a cold, merciless silence, broken only by the distant clang of harbor chains and the restless breathing of the sea below. And in that darkness, a woman stood trembling at the edge, wrists bound, eyes wide with the kind of fear that steals words from the throat. The officers surrounding her wore badges that glinted like false stars, and the water beneath reflected their shapes in jagged shards, as if the ocean itself already knew what was about to happen. She had begged without sound, her breath shallow, her heart pounding so hard it felt like it might leap from her chest and escape before she could. She did not know that fate had paused only a few steps away, crouched in the shadows, watching with unblinking eyes and a steady, disciplined heart, accompanied by a dog whose instincts were sharper than knives and whose loyalty was older than fear. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet courage that still exists in this world, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this remind us that hope sometimes waits just out of sight. Her name was Lena, though no one on that pier cared to ask, and the wind tangled her hair across her face as the men closed in. She had grown up by the sea, learned its moods and tempers, respected its beauty and its danger, but nothing in her years had prepared her for being forced toward it like an unwanted secret. She had stumbled into something she was never meant to see, a late-night exchange, a handoff at the docks, the kind of transaction that stained uniforms and rotted integrity from the inside out. When she tried to do the right thing, to report it, the system she trusted folded in on itself and spat her back out, alone and mocked. The officers who should have protected her now treated her like a problem to be erased, their faces set with the casual cruelty of men who believed themselves untouchable. They dragged her closer to the edge, the concrete slick beneath her shoes, the salt air burning her lungs. The city lights shimmered across the water like broken promises, and the waves below rolled and hissed, eager and indifferent. Lena's thoughts raced to her mother's kitchen table, to the warmth of morning sunlight and the smell of coffee, to all the ordinary moments she had taken for granted. Her body shook, not just from fear but from the weight of injustice pressing down on her, a realization that this was how it ended for some people, quietly, without headlines or apologies. Unseen by the men, a figure in camouflage stood half-hidden behind a stack of rusted containers, muscles coiled, breath controlled, eyes scanning every movement with lethal calm. He had come to the port for a reason unrelated to corruption or cruelty, following a trail that led him here for training and observation, but the universe had other plans. Beside him, a German shepherd crouched low, ears pricked, nostrils flaring as it caught the sharp scent of fear and the metallic tang of wrongdoing. The dog's name was Atlas, and he had been trained to read the world the way some men read maps, to sense when something was terribly wrong long before words could explain it. The Navy SEAL watched as the situation unfolded, his mind calculating angles, distances, probabilities. Years of service had taught him to recognize the difference between a lawful arrest and an execution masquerading as one. His jaw tightened as he saw the way the officers positioned themselves, blocking the pier, the way one of them glanced over his shoulder, checking for witnesses. The SEAL's heart did not race, it steadied. This was the moment when training met conscience, when silence became complicity if left unbroken. Lena was shoved forward, her feet skidding, her balance faltering as the sea roared louder beneath her. One of the officers laughed, a sound swallowed by the wind, and another tightened his grip, as if savoring the power he held. The cold spray kissed her ankles, and she cried out as the night seemed to tilt, the world narrowing to the edge and the endless dark below. She thought of praying, but the words tangled in her chest, heavy and useless. Then everything happened at once, though later it would feel like time had stretched thin and fragile. The SEAL moved without hesitation, a shadow breaking free from the darkness, his presence sudden and undeniable. Atlas surged forward at his side, a controlled burst of energy and purpose, paws striking concrete in a rhythm that echoed like a drumbeat. The officers barely had time to turn before the calm night shattered into chaos, their confidence cracking as they realized they were no longer alone. The SEAL's movements were precise, efficient, driven by a code that did not bend. He closed the distance in seconds, disarming one officer with a twist and a strike that sent the man sprawling. Atlas lunged, not to maul but to block, to herd, to force space where Lena could breathe, his teeth bared in a warning that froze another officer mid-step. The corrupt men shouted and stumbled, their authority dissolving under the weight of sudden accountability. One of them reached for a weapon, but the SEAL was already there. Strength and restraint balanced perfectly, forcing the gun away and pinning the arm with a pressure that spoke of countless drills and a refusal to cross a line. Lena collapsed to her knees, gasping, the cold biting into her skin as the bonds around her wrists were cut away. She barely registered the world around her, only the sensation of solid ground beneath her and the realization that she was not falling, not drowning, not disappearing into the dark. The SEAL crouched briefly, checking her for injuries, his expression unreadable but his actions gentle, grounding. Atlas stood guard, body angled protectively, eyes never leaving the men who had. Moments ago held her life in their hands. Sirens wailed in the distance, drawn by the disturbance and perhaps by something deeper. A ripple of truth finally breaking the surface. The corrupt officers were subdued, their protests hollow and panicked now, the weight of consequences crashing down on them like the waves they had meant for her. The SEAL made the call that would set everything in motion, reporting the incident with clarity and precision, names and details delivered without embellishment, because the truth did not need drama to be powerful. As emergency lights washed the pier in red and blue, Lena sat wrapped in a blanket, shaking not from cold but from the aftershock of survival. She watched as the men who had tried to erase her were led away, their heads bowed, their badges dull and meaningless. For the first time that night she allowed herself to cry, not out of fear but out of release, the tears carving paths down her face as the enormity of what had almost happened settled into her bones. In the days that followed, the story spread, not as a viral sensation at first but as a quiet reckoning. Investigations unraveled a web of corruption that had festered for years, names falling one by one as the truth refused to stay buried. Lena gave her statement, voice steady despite the memories clawing at her, supported by advocates who ensured she was heard and protected. The SEAL remained in the background as he preferred, his role documented but his face largely unseen, while Atlas became a symbol of unwavering loyalty and the instincts that had helped save a life. Lena's recovery was not immediate or simple. Nights were restless, haunted by the echo of waves and the feel of hands pushing her forward. But she found strength in small victories, in therapy sessions that helped her reclaim her breath, in mornings where the sun rose and she was there to see it. She volunteered at a local shelter by the water, slowly rebuilding her relationship with the sea, learning again that it could be a place of healing as well as danger. Each step forward was an act of defiance against the fear that had once threatened to define her. The SEAL returned to his duties, carrying the weight of the night with him, but also the quiet affirmation that stepping in had mattered. Atlas trained and rested, content in the knowledge that he had done what he was born to do. Sometimes, in rare moments of stillness, the SEAL would think of the pier and the woman who had stood at the edge, and he would remind himself that vigilance was not just a mission requirement, but a moral one. Months later, when the trials concluded and sentences were handed down, Lena stood outside the courthouse, the air crisp and clean. She felt lighter, not because justice erased the past, but because it acknowledged it. She spoke to reporters briefly, choosing her words carefully, focusing not on the horror, but on the help, on the strangers who had intervened when it mattered most. She talked about second chances, about the responsibility to speak up even when the cost seemed unbearable, and about the unseen guardians who walk among us, ready to act when darkness oversteps. If this story touched your heart, if it made you feel the fragile but fierce power of human decency, Take a moment near the end of this video to like, share, and subscribe, because your engagement helps these stories reach others who might need hope. And before this story closes, please leave a comment below sharing what part moved you the most, because your words matter more than you know. On quiet evenings, Lena would return to the pier, standing a safe distance from the edge, breathing in the salt air and watching the lights dance on the water. She no longer saw the sea as a threat waiting to claim her, but as a reminder of how close she had come and how far she had traveled since. Somewhere out there, beyond the horizon, the world continued with all its flaws and miracles, but she knew now that, even in the darkest moments, unseen eyes might be watching, and sometimes they would choose to step forward and change everything.